Okay, we are holding on page Kuftes, opposite of page 216. We're holding about a quarter of the way up from the bottom of the page, a third of the way up. The first word in the line is va'amnam l'chayra, and that's where we're starting from, va'amnam l'chayra. It seems that you're more distant today.
Two tables, that's a longer table.
Aha. Yeah.
Hoping that maybe some people show up so they don't want to be on one table.
So we spoke the last 2 weeks. We're talking here about David HaMelech's Malchus, and more specifically, we're talking about the contributions that David HaMelech received from Adam and from the Avis and from Yosef. We start today with Chassidus HaMaaseh in honor of Chassidus today. So there's a Chassid in Crown Heights. Man, he's 101 years old. His name is Mendel Merazov. Or maybe I mentioned for the past story. I sat by many of his Farbrengens. Today his memory is not there anymore. But in the last 15 years, I used to go to him a lot. He's still there fully in his mind. You can have a conversation with him, but he doesn't have memory anymore. I guess it's two different parts of the brain. Because some people, it's the opposite. You can't really carry a conversation, but their memory, they remember old things. And
old things.
What?
Old things, not recent things.
Right. And by him, all the stories I heard from him, I can repeat them to him, and he has a blank stare on his face. But I could find him, I heard a lot from him. So he is actually born in Lubavitch, the city of Lubavitch in 1916. And his father was a personal secretary, the aide of the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitch Rebbe, who passed away in 1920, and then of the Frierdiker Rebbe. When the Frierdiker Rebbe was arrested in 1927, his father was also arrested. In fact, this Mendel, he was 11 years old at the time. And he remembers that they got like a few minutes advance warning that the KGB is coming, and his father gave him a pile of papers and gave it to him and said, Mendel, life, run. He took the papers and he ran out of the house, and he stood by the corner, and he was actually watched as they came into his house and they took away his father. Frierdiker Rebbe was released a few weeks later on Yud Beis Tammuz, and then eventually left Russia shortly, a few months afterwards. His father stayed in jail for another 3 years. Not in jail. And they sent him off to some far off, Russia is huge, some far off place.
Siberia.
What?
Not Siberia.
I don't think it was Siberia. Siberia wasn't the only place. The Rebbe's father wasn't sent to Siberia. They sent you in Govels. And actually, he says he remembers those 3 years because during those 3 years, so his father went off there, and there was some sort of community of Yidden in that place, but they were completely Amaratzim, not Shemitari. They knew nothing, observed nothing. So for the next 3 years, their job was they were busy sending to his father. This is the early 30s. Tzitzis and tefillin, because his father was busy being mekar of everyone in that place, all the Yidden. Akapanim. We were talking about you, that we missed you.
I didn't, first Tuesday I didn't even know, and then...
Good, we weren't looking for excuses. We were talking about how it's our loss that you're not here, that's all. Okay, so... And his father wasn't a person. It wasn't just sometimes a secretary is also a simple person. His father was also the chavrusa of the Frierdiker Rebbe before he became Rebbe, and he was 2 years older than the Frierdiker Rebbe. And the Rebbe Rashab specifically asked him to be the chavrusa of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and we have in the diary from the Rebbe Rashab where he writes that I'm so happy today that I got this. His name was Chanya Merazov to learn with my son. And that's the esteem that he was held in. Frierdiker Rebbe talks very greatly about him also. He eventually was killed, Kiddush Hashem, by the KGB in 1938. But so in the mid-30s, there was a time when the Frierdiker Rebbe was very ill. Frierdiker Rebbe got a few strokes in the mid-30s. This was when he was already living in Poland, and later on he started suffering from multiple sclerosis. Frierdiker Rebbe. By the way, today Gimel Tammuz. I said the day the Frierdiker Rebbe was arrested, right? Today, Gimel Tammuz was the day the Frierdiker Rebbe was released from jail in 1927. And then he was sent off to Kazakhstan, or Chile, actually, in Almaty. And he was released from there on Yud Beis Tammuz. But today, actually, is Gimel Tammuz is that day. So, Peter Rebbe wasn't well. And there was so I heard the story from Mendel a few times that there was by Farbrengen. And at that time, the KGB were again looking for him. In other words, he had been released like 2 years earlier from, but for his activities in Yiddishkeit, they were again looking. He had to change his name and he had to hide. He wasn't able to live with his father even at that time because there was such a pachad at that time. We can't even begin to imagine the pachad that was there at that time. But there's a Farbrengen in the house of a chassid, and so his father, Reb Chanya, he begins to speak, and he starts speaking, and he actually repeats what his father said. But to get to the point, when he finished his drash, he says, "Listen, the reports are from Oistland, from out of the country, that the Rebbe isn't well." He was the main contact person between the Rebbe and who was outside of the country and the Chassidim there. And therefore, what we have to do is we have to give years to the Rebbe. We have to donate years from our life to the Rebbe. So he pulled out a pen and a paper from his pocket and says, "Okay, who's donating years to the Rebbe?" And everyone is sitting like, "This is serious business, donating years." So it's quiet for a minute, and he says, "Okay, so I'll start." He says, I am giving all my years to the Rebbe. And if I have permission to, I'm also giving the years of my wife and my kids also to the Rebbe." And he writes that down on a piece of paper. And then he says, "Okay, now let's start going around." One person gives 6 months, another person gives a year, another person gives 2 years, but he was the one who started. And anyway, so I'm reminded of that because here also we're talking about donating years here in this Maimer. Talking about the Adam and the obvious, yeah. Okay, so we started with a Chassidus story. Farbrengen, I guess, a precursor to the Farbrengen to come. Vakapanim, we have the donation of the years. So we already explained last week that Adam Rishon, the 70 years that he gave, he was donating Chachma. Well, Chachma, which is higher than Midas. Etzem HaChachma, he was donating to David. We discussed last week how this is all the process of Binyan HaMalchus. In other words, this is really just a reflection of what's going on in the higher worlds in terms of how Malchus, which creates worlds, it receives. So the first thing it has to receive from Chachma. And then it has to receive Midas. So Avram Avinu donated 5 Midas, which are connected to Heich Sadim. And now we're going to take a little break. And the Rebbe is going to ask a question. And let's do this inside. In other words, we still have to figure out by Yitzchak why Yitzchak didn't donate and what Yaakov's donation was and what Yosef's. But before we get to there, we're going to take a drop of a detour. Al Pi Kabbalah, they're Heich Sadim and Heich Gvuras. I've never seen explained what the details are of the Heich Sadim, what the details are of the Heich Gvuras. But this speaks about in many, many different places that they're.
The recipe for Malchus.
Yeah. So it needs to get Chachma, needs to get Midas. We're going to find everything it needs to get. This is the concoction. So we started off with like you said last week, the DNA. So we started off with Chachma, and we end with Chesed, and now we're going to take a break, and the Tzemach Tzedek is going to ask a question. We still have to understand. Because we're not talking about physical life. It's not pshat. As we mentioned earlier, when it says the David is about Naftali, it doesn't mean that literally he was a miscarriage. Talking here that where they were giving him spiritual koiches. So malama nechseru kimisparan, why do they have to be missing in their exact numbers? B'makir shemesham nimshechu, from the place from where they are nimshach. To the extent ki Adam Rishon chai pachas me'elef ayin shana, to the extent that Adam Rishon literally lived 70 years less than the 1,000 that were allotted to him. V'chein Avram, and same thing turns to Avram, Keniskar Lil, as mentioned earlier. V'harei hamadlik ner min ner, if you light one candle from another candle, eini machish u'machas la'yidei za'ir ha'rishon, nothing is being missing, nothing is missing from the first oir. So it's very important to understand the question and what the question is and what the question isn't. The question isn't that since we're talking here about Ruchnis Teka Hashpois, why did were they missing Gashmis Teka years, physical years? That's not a question. By now we all should know that that's exactly the way it works, that everything that there is Begashmias is a 100% a reflection of the way things are Beruchnius. So if Beruchnius there's 5 years missing, there's Heich Sadim missing, and if Beruchnius, in other words, if Avram has to give off from him Heich Sadim Beruchnius, that'll reflect itself the Gashmius, that Avram will lose 5 years.
In the same vein that you say that there's a Malach that says, Uncle Esav, this is Gadol, in the same vein as that? That there's that everything that's Gashmius is a mirror?
No. I mean, I'm talking about in a deeper way, which is that the Gashmius and the Ruchnius literally mirror each other. That because Gashmius is only a Hishtalshalus from the Ruchnius. So whatever phenomenon happens, now let's put it in different words. By Kriyas Yamsuf, there's 2 ways to look at Kriyas Yamsuf. One way to look at it is that the water split. Then you look in Kabbalah and Chassidus and talks about the significance of that the water is Alma Diskasia and the worlds and dry land is Alma Diskalia. So this is an allusion to the fact that also that there was a revelation of the levels of Alma Diskalia by Kriyas Yamsuf. That's one way to look at it. That's the way most people will look at it. But it's not that way at all. Why did the water split? Because Alma Diskalia was revealed. And since water in this world is simply a shtalshalus of Alma Diskalia, so therefore physically, if we understand that everything in the physical just naturally is a byproduct of a shtalshalus of the spiritual, then obviously whatever occurs in the spiritual realm happens in the physical realm. You know the famous sikh from the Rabbi, I'm sure everyone here heard. Why it says that by Matan Torah there was no echo. Kil gadol v'lo yasaf, as I state in the pasuk. The Medrash says there was no echo. Why wasn't there an echo? So, in other words, v'lo yasaf means that when normally you speak, so you speak, and then the echo, you know, if you're in a mountain, you hear it again. The yasaf, what?
The echo doesn't have a makar. You're saying it's false. The echo.
Okay, so there's shivim pan malteira. The Rebbe explains that. That's not negating what you're saying. The Rebbe explains that an echo happens when a sound hits a barrier which it can't penetrate, so therefore it bounces off. That's the whole koyach of acoustics, you know. But by Matan Torah, the koil penetrated everything. The Eibush, the whole kuda was that the gashmi should be permeated by the ruchnias. So because spiritually, there was nothing that stood in the way of it. Spiritually, there was nothing that was myelin that was able to block or so therefore, it's physically the same thing. But it's not that Hashem is making a trick. It's actually, it sounds like a miracle, but there was no echo, there wasn't a miracle. Because if we understand, I mean, it's a miracle in our perception, but if we understand that everything that happens in this world is simply a reflection of the way things work above, then if there's a change in the spiritual, the automatic result will be, so the same thing is, so that's not the question. Because that's a davar butter, that everything in the physical realm is merely a reflection of that which goes on in the spiritual. That's a very big yisoid in Pnimi Satira, that everything over here is just a reflection of the way things are above. Now we're standing here today in Gimel Tammuz. There's a famous Gemara, Kedusha Gemara, Seita, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by Tzadikim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yeshev Hu Memale, what's the lashon Yimeim Ushneseim Yoyim L'Yoyim, which means that tzaddikim pass away on their birthdays. A separate question is why we see today it isn't always that way. That's another question which I'm not going to address right now. But as they state in the Gemara, Moshe Rabbeinu passed away on his birthday. V'oid many other tzaddikim that passed away on their birthdays. Why is that a milo to pass away on one's birthday? So as the Gemara says, "Kashem shehem tmimim kachne sehem tmimim," just like they're complete, their years are complete, because physical years when they're complete is a reflection of a spiritual perfection. And if there's a spiritual perfection, it's supposed to also manifest itself in a physical way. It's just another example of how the physical mirrors the spiritual. Now, sometimes there could be misalignment for whatever reason, but b'chlalos, that's the way it is. Especially in Galus, there can be misalignment. That's one of the natures of Galus. But b'chlalos, that's the way it is. So therefore, the question isn't, hey, yes, that Avram and Yitzchak, they're only giving koiches ruchniim, so why do they have to give? No. He's very clear. The question is something else. He says that when it comes to ruchniis de kahashpois, the fact that you give doesn't mean you're missing out on anything. And the example he gives is of Eir Haner.
Right.
Or the example that is another example brought on many places in Chassidus, is an example of a Rav and a Talmud, which is that if a Rav teaches, so he's giving over to his Talmud, but there's nothing missing, right? Famous Vayatzel Man Haruach B'Negei to Moshe Rabbeinu. So Hayos that Adam and Avram didn't miss anything spiritually, nothing was missing from them. L'chayr, it's something they can give without anything being diminished from themselves. Then why did they lose physical years if spiritually they weren't missing anything? If spiritually they're missing something, then we understand why they lose the years. The question isn't, this is spiritual, so why is it reflecting physically? No. But if the physical is to be a accurate reflection of the spiritual, l'chayra, when we're dealing with spiritual entities, giving doesn't make you lose anything.
The emotional nimshal can't be true. Your question is based upon the fact that you're comparing the hashpah that they gave to the net. So it must be that it's not the same.
Or mashal v'rafta talmud.
So it must be it's not the same.
Okay, so in a chanami, but that we have to figure out why. That's what we're going to figure out inside.
What does that mean they gave? Like, what do you mean they gave? You gave them what do you?
Again, if we're to understand this the way it is l'mayla, that Adam represents Chachma Datzilus, and Avram represents Chesed Datzilus, right? So when we're saying that Malchus Datzilus receives from Chachma and from Chesed, so therefore automatically the way that plays out in terms of the people who represented it, that means that David receives his chayis from Adam and Avram. But the question is, the way it is Lamayla, in Hashpos, nothing's missing.
Encompass the whole package, whatever that means. The whole package of Chachma was Adam.
Right, he was a manifestation of that.
He is Chachma.
In Sefer HaBoyer it says that, as I say in Sefer HaBoyer, I think it was written by the Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana, right? Sefer and Kabbalah, very old Sefer and Kabbalah. And it says over there that Midas HaChesed of Atzilus complained to the Eibishter that as long as Avram is alive in this world and doing his chesed, I have no job. I have nothing what to do. Avram was literally the manifestation of Chesed Atzilus on this world. He embodied Chesed Atzilus. So whatever truth there is in the higher Olamus, Lagabi, the relationship between, an interplay between Chachma and Chesed, and Malchus also is an interplay between Avram and Adam and David HaMelech. Acha Inyan. On the face, 16 lines on the bottom. Acha Inyan, Kihini Amshach, Asachai Zum Adam Va'avis B'David. This Amshach Asachai is from Adam and from the Avis to David, who begins Hashpala Atzuma, is an incredible Hashpala, lowering, Shaloi Kefia Adraga, which is in Gansen not according to the normal Seder. Hadraga means in a relative way, medarga ladarga. What?
Gradual.
Right, not correct, exactly. It's not gradual. Kehinin is bar. We explained earlier. Shadavid u'b'chinas malchus datzilus. David is malchus datzilus. Uksiv bein regarding David it says, "V'chol davar le'yichachid ben hamelech." There's nothing that escapes the knowledge of the king. Meaning shashgachas hamelech, that the king's hashgacha, the king's providence. He al kol prati maisa enish me'amoy is in every detail of all the people of his nation. Le'nela mimenu davar, nothing is hidden from him. Ulamayla, and why is this? Because this is a reflection of the way it is above. Hainu gamkin, you read this hamalchus datzilus. David was a reflection of malchus datzilus. Hamalchus datzilus, the pasuk ragleha yerda ismaves is said about malchus datzilus, that it comes down, it's in Slavish. You read this Hamalchus Atzilus be'ilmus biyah. It comes down in Slavish in the ilmus biyah lahachyes, to give life, ulakayim kol pratia ilmus, to give existence to all the details of all the world. Shebebiyah elif Allah misham shunei chula. The pasuk says in Daniel, thousands upon thousands of malachim serve Hashem, and as the pasuk again, v'ribu ravav an kadamoi, and tens of thousands stand before Hashem, stand before Him, and every single malach. It's not, you know, you have the paper cuts, you know what a paper cut people is? You know, like, they're all the exact same. I don't know how to do it, but what? So you can imagine, so that if you have these tens of thousands, no, every malach is unidimensional, has one, let's put it in different words. The Rambam talks about this actually in Hilchos Yisei Torah. Three-dimensional beings, which is all of us. What differentiates me from you, and me from you? So on the one hand, we can say that, what do you mean? You have gray hair? My hair, I still have a few that aren't gray, right? I have a beard, you don't yet have a beard. Right? Your shirt is... My hair has to become gray and you have to get a beard. Anyways, you have a pink shirt, I have a white shirt, right? Okay, that's Chassidus. You have your set of Seichel Midas, I have my set of Seichel Midas. Right? But let's say, for the argument's sake, that we were identical twins. We shared the exact same DNA. Okay, even then you can there's still differences. Okay, but what if off of the assembly line we have two watches, and I put them next to each other. So what differentiates this one from that one? Is it the same watch? It's not the same watch. You have two watches. Why is it two and not one? And the answer is very simple. What? Space. Exactly. This occupies this space and this occupies this space. In concept, however, there's only one watch. Right? The concept of this watch is only one. But because it's physical, and therefore it takes up space, and therefore you can have two things that are identical, and they're two and not one. In spiritual concepts, it doesn't work that way. Because they don't occupy physical space, if the concept of both things is one, then they are one. They are the same thing. So for example, how many
they don't occupy space?
Right, so how many 2 plus 2 equals 4 are there in the world? So I can write it on this page, I can write it on this page, okay? So then I have 2 pages, but not 2 plus 2 equals 4s. There's only one, it's a single concept. So the same things when it comes to...
That's Eliyahu going to every bris?
So Eliyahu, I have to process that. Meaning, how does Eliyahu go to every bris?
Every bris, at the same time, every bris, but he's not occupying space.
That's Eliyahu Navi Taka, he's a malach. It's, for sure malachim don't occupy space. Although, by the way, that's not such a davar pasha. It's actually a machlokes rishonim about that. There are those malachim who say that. There are those rishonim who say that what?
Person feels squeezed sometimes.
Yeah, but that could be that lav has to mean that you can feel squeezed, and that's duchke. Where is the lashon by the collar, right? But that can mean that because there's spiritual entities, so there's my neshama feels it and I feel claustrophobic. That doesn't necessarily mean kipshute. But there are those days that that everything is made of four Yisroel. Those who say the malachim are Eish and Ruach. It's based on the pasuk we say in Barchi Nafshi. What do we say in Barchi Nafshi? Eish malach is Eish malach of Ruach is Eish loy et epsazay, right? Those that argue. Chassidus mostly takes on the shitta that they don't take up. In other words, does wind and fire, are they three-dimensional? But at least there's some sort of something. But b'chlalos and Chassidus is mekubal that malachim are totally spiritual entities. And the Rambam also definitely learns that way. If you look in Rambam, so therefore, if you have two malachim, so what is a malach? A malach is an idea. A malach is a concept. It's not a physical thing. It's a concept. It's an idea. It's an inyan ruchni. It's a madrega ruchni. So if you have two malachim that are in the same madrega, then it's not two malachim. It's one malach. One malach, and every malach we know is unidimensional, as opposed to human beings. I have chachma bina das chesed gevura teferes natzachud yisayid, and we're composites of them, and chachma sheba chesed sheba teferes, and we have everything within us, which is why we have such an incredible spectrum, and human beings can accomplish so many different things. As opposed to a malach, we know that every malach has only one shlichus.
Did we say the same thing about an animal?
Did we speak on this last week?
Yeah, we said something about an animal.
You said, was it here? I remember speaking last week.
But an animal, you said that. An animal also has...
Right. So malach has one shlichus. So when we talk about the tens of thousands of malachim, it's not. We're talking about each one is a different madriga. It's not just a lot of numbers. It's not a nameless, faceless beings that they're all the same nekuda. Every single, even we spoke of last week, Rabbi Machne Machol was, how many? The state, 187,000. That's either Machol or Gavriel. Each one has more than 150,000 malachim, it says, in their camp. But it's not pshat that they're all the same thing. It's just a lot of numbers, which is, in other words, you have a lot of watches. But each one is a different nekuda. And Malchus Datzilos has to be, is the one that's mislabish in the details and the individual identity of every single one of them. Just like the king, in other words, just like the king Begashmis here in this world, is the one, Asher Ruach Boy, who, knows the needs of every single being. David was called the Roya because he took care of the different sheep, as we spoke. So the king takes care of every individual. Malchus Datzilos caters to the needs of every single one of the creations in Biyah, including the Malachim. There's so many hundreds of thousands of Malachim, but again, and every single one according to its madrega. There's a job of Malchus Datzilus. Again, this is why the king is a reflection of Malchus Datzilus. To be mashpia, it's the job of Malchus Datzilus to mashpia to everyone kifi mizgoy utchunase, according to its mezeg, which is its sorry.
Nature.
Mezeg literally means it's mixture. It's but I mean it's character. It's unique blend of character. Utchunase and its characteristics. V'chein Mashgiach b'shkacha pratis, and to be mashgiach with shkacha pratis al kol ma'aseim, on all the deeds of machshavim and thoughts of tachbulisayim and achievements. V'hareza b'chinas hashpala be'erach. This is incredible lowering. Shalei kafi hadrage klal. Again, not at all. What was the word you used before? Sequential. You had a better word. No, the shalei badrage. Not proportionate, not gradual. Legabi Eiris Atzilus Asman, relative to the Eiris of Atzilus, Shehim Ba'atzilus, Shehim Bebechinas Ein Seif Mamish. The Eiris of Atzilus are Mamish Ein Saf. And therefore, Kashatzad, Achli Yisam Shachel Bebechinas Atzilus, you have to have Shachel from Atzilus, in other words, like from Chachmad Atzilus or Chesed Atzilus, from Adam Rishon or from Avram. To have Hamshachah from Chachmeila in Melucha. Shetian Hage Bechachma, and to have Chachma in Melucha, right? V'chein Ma'midas Al Yonis, and the same thing goes also when it comes to the Midas, Keniskar Li'il, as mentioned earlier by Avram. It's impossible for the Ara to come from it as it is in its place, Sheba Atzilus. It's impossible. It's impossible for ha'ara that's coming from its place and from its essence and atzilus magas adsham to be able to reach their kirachik ma'oid have the la'arach shebeneim, because there's such a distance in between them. Between chachma and chesed, as the Aron Atzilus, and Malchus, which is, I mentioned, has to be mislabish and biyah. I want to read a few lines and then we'll talk into the gist of it. Elam, the only way it's possible to have Amshacha from Chachma or Chesed into Atzilus is only Elay Nimshcha Eza Ha'ara Vashpa Atzilus, only if there's some sort of ray in Ashpa that comes from Atzilus, Lahoyer Bebechina Zuda Malchus, to radiate within Malchus, Lahan Hagas Eilumas Biyah, by which Malchus can lead the worlds of Biyah. Azai then, Behechrich, it must be she mistalekes v'yitzas b'mekoimum mamada legami, that the oiris of chesed and the oiris of chachma completely leave the place where they are. Ad shelehi motzei to motzei eid b'mekoima v'amada harishem, to the point that they left, they actually departed where they were, because it went out to be nimshach in a distant place, but diluga erach moed, with a leap, with a jump, with an exponential jump, Kinish Kalil was mentioned earlier. It's not compared to the Eir Haner. Shagam sha'im el makam echad kavua, that even though the light is in one place, kavua makam makam eiri megia, eiri meir megia gam b'chol habayis, its light extends throughout the house. Kizeh eini el laksham makam karev be'erech, only when if it's close, in other words, a place that's close by to the light, it could receive the light without you moving the candle. Well, a Maila Gamkein, and also above Hainu, Be'atzilos Atzmai, in Atzilus itself, Me Bechina Zu Le Bechina Zu, from one level to another. In other words, to have ha'ara from chachma and chesed, or chesed and teferes. It doesn't have to leave its place. It could be like a candle in its place, and it could be meir. Shagam kshi b'mekayma. Even when one madrega and atzilus is in its place, shagam kshi b'mekayma imedes, tucha lahoyr or lashpia b'chaverta can be meir and can be mashpia in the other one. Chulu avok kshi miracheikim meir b'dila ga'erech. But if they're very distant, leitagia ara. The ha'ara which is coming from its place won't be able to reach there. Pirush matz muslim muhusay shel elyin el atachten. You won't be able to get from the essence of the upper one to the lower one. Kinitzkaliyul kiim the only way. Kasher yazis v'yaver atzmei. When you move yourself, literally ha'elyin memekaymi. When the elyin moves from its place, el atachten kanal. Halama zadema, lama zadema. I know we're doing a lot. We'll talk about it soon. What is this similar to? La'ir haneir, the light of a candle. From its place, it can light, let's say, 10 amas. But what if you want the oir to go 20 amma? I'm wondering if the mashal is also meduyik. I mean, I'm sure it's meduyik, but Esher amas is the 10 spheres. But if you want to extend it to the next 10, right, to the azay behechrich lekarve Esher amas lahala, you have to move it 10 amas further. From its place where it is. Kacha mamish l'mayla, the same thing is also l'mayla. The batzilos atzmoi yuchali yisagili ara. Let's stop over here for a second.
But when you move the candle, you're saying when you move it, there isn't a sun.
Well, yeah, because the original place now becomes darker. Right.
Yeah.
It becomes darker. Yeah. So I think it'll be easier to understand this if we use the mashal of a Rav and a Talmud. So you mentioned earlier that when a Rav teaches a Talmud, it's nothing is chaser by him. But let's analyze that mashal. When you have a Rav and a Talmud who are be'erach one to another, but still the Rav is higher than the Talmud, but still they're be'erach one to another. So then the Rav, at a very simple level, teaching a Gemara shir. The Rav has more knowledge, more information, a keener understanding, and more chushim, and being able to chap an inyan. So he shares what he has with the Talmud. When he is sharing what he has with the Talmud, is he at that moment leaving himself? No, he's revealing himself to his Talmud. He's revealing his own thought process. This is a major revelation. So he is right now immersed in the sugya, and like a candle, he's talking about that which he's immersed in, revealing that which he's immersed in. So nothing is missing from him at this moment, but he's sharing what he has with someone else. But what about a teacher who has to teach 5-year-olds? Can the teacher be in his place and teach 5-year-olds?
He has to lower himself.
He has to lower himself.
But that's only relative. The Rav's also lowering himself, but relatively less. He's still lowering
Why?
himself.
If he wants
It's
to
not.
go over
It's
a
not.
shear,
It's not an issue.
he'll
It's not. It's not an issue so much of lowering himself. Very often, the Rav, when teaching Gemara, doesn't have to lower himself. He reveals himself, and the people are makabel. He was sitting and he was preparing this year, and now he's sitting. And sometimes, if you have a Rav and a Talmud and they're be'erach each other, what?
Yeah, but that's why. But relative.
Not mamish equal, but they're in the same. They're in the same.
It's the same thing. I'm saying so. The gap is so light that he really doesn't have to.
Because
the gap is bigger.
Their muhus is the same. In other words, just taking out silus. Let's go back to everything. There's a lakus. So this is a little higher. This is a little lower. So a Rav shares the Gemara. He's learning the Gemara. How many times, if a Rav would sit and learn the Gemara, but out loud, everything he's thinking, the people around him can pick up what he's saying, and he's not leaving. When I say he's not leaving himself, is he's still in his same thought process, and in his amkos, in his way.
Yeah, okay.
When you're teaching a 5-year-old, you have to literally leave your place. When I say your place, I mean your way of thinking, and you have to say, okay, right now I'm lowering myself, and I'm going to be able to give over only a drop. And when you are doing that, when the teacher is doing that, he's not in his own thought process. He's not busy being himself. He is right now missing from where he is, and he's elsewhere right now. Whereas a Rav and a Talmud, if he's teaching a Talmud's be'erach, he's not missing from where he is. He's being himself in his own place. He's being a candle. and the candle is illuminating, other people are picking up the light, and therefore he's not missing. He doesn't have to pick himself up and go elsewhere. When you have to pick yourself up and go elsewhere, it's impossible for the teacher at that moment, when he's teaching, to be present in himself also.
And to learn more, for example.
Sorry?
To learn more.
And to learn more, but in general, he left his amkus, his madrega. He's right now not thinking as a Rosh Yeshiva. He's right now lowering himself down and giving over. So in other words, he's saying, Einach anami, that in Il Masar Ruchni, Mashpa, in your Ruchni from one madrega to another madrega doesn't necessarily necessitate leaving your place or missing anything, but that is only true when the Ashpa is Be'erach. But if the Ashpa is Be'ein Aroich, as is the case from Atzilus to Biyah, because Atzilus is a Lukus.
So in reverse, is that the look the Moshe Rabbeinu had to make when he left the Olam Hagashmi to it says it in the Devarim, the one lead. Is that putting it in reverse?
And Har Nevoy.
Yeah.
L'choira. I've never seen it, but if we were to understand the axiom that we said earlier, which is that everything in Elam Haza is a reflection of the way it is in higher Elamus, so then the fact that he leaped obviously shows on some sort of diluk. I could make an argument to you also that maybe that's only Beruchnis, because when it comes to Midrashim, not every one of them is we have to learn about Pashtus. In other words, the Moshe jumping up a mountain which presumably is thousands of feet high with one step, Lav Dafka, a medrash like that has to be understood kipshutik. That's a separate conversation.
I'm saying that. That's the point I'm exactly saying.
I'm sorry. You're middle saying something.
So in Atzilus Gufa, where everything is Elokus. Okay, so there's higher level Elokus, there's lower level. There's Chachma, which is obviously the Makir B'Sheish of everything, and there's Seichel, and there's the Midas, and in previous Mamarim we've talked about the difference in all of these. But since they're all a Fi Erach, one can shine into the other, and the higher level doesn't have to leave its place. It can be what it is, and the lower level is Mekabel from it. Nothing is lost. However, when we require over here Ashpa into Sfira Samalchus, and because the job of Sfira Samalchus is to be Mashgiach and Biyah, and to lower itself to Nivroim, which has mentioned on many occasions, the jump from Atzilus to Bria, Biyah is a totally different thing. That's where there's difference in Chachma and Bria. It's difference in Chachma and Bina. That's the difference between Atzilus, which is an emanation from Hashem, and Bria, which is a creation, a Metzias. So that is such a leap be'en aroich that the only way to have that ashpa is Chachma has to lower itself all the way down to the level of Malchus in order for Malchus to be able to receive from it. And the same thing with Chesed. And in order for it to do it, it's vacating its place. It's like you're moving the candle, and there is darkness. And that's why there was missing over there Taka in Chachma and in Chesed, and that's why Taka the Avos and Avram Avinu were Taka missing physical years, because the physical is a reflection of the spiritual. Let's do weiter inside. Kacha mamish l'mayla. 9 lines from the top. Kacha mamish l'mayla. The exact same thing is above the Be'atzilus atzmai. In Atzilus yuchaliyas gilia ara. There could be a gilia ara mamira makim ubechinas hayesher yena, which shines from a higher place. Nimshachas ad bechinas hayesher tatayna, which comes even to the lowest level. Hagam shu berich l'gasher sfiras. Yeah, it's pretty clear that he's making an analog 10 amas to 10 sfiras. From Chachma all the way to even to Malchus, you can get a Gilui. What?
It's funny that he says until Malchus as well.
Right, because Bechlalos, and there are two Madrigas in Malchus. There's Malchus as it is in Atzilus, and for there, then there's Malchus as it's yoded into Biyah. Makal Makam Marikulam Besug of, as you stated, that Malchus of Atzilus becomes the keser for Elam Habriya. So there are two madrigas. There's Malchus as it's the lowest madriga in Atzilus, and there's Malchus as it's the highest madriga of Biyah. So here we're talking here about Malchus, obviously, as it's nimshach into the Elamus. So Makal Makam Erekulim Besug ve'erach echad. From Chachma through Malchus to Atzilus, again Malchus as it is in Atzilus, it's all one sug, and it's all one. It's all in one world. You have the worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Sir, Nasiya, Al Derech Dugma, are Daimim Tzemei Chaim Medaber. In other words, they correspond to each other. So you can have in Doimim, you have many different things, right? In Tzemeach, you can have a erez, a cedar tree, and you can have a piece of grass. And in Chai, you can have a mosquito, and you have a karnei re'im, right? You have an elephant. But at the end of the day, they're all one erech, one sug. But from Doimim to Tzemeach, or Tzemeach to Chai, or Chai to Medaber, that's already, it's a different world. It's a Gatzen be'in arech. So within Atzilus, you have many. You have Chachma, Bina, Chesed, Gevura, Tferes, Malchus, all, but it's all one sug. It's one. And what is that one sug? What is the category that it is? The Iyu v'Garmoy Yichad, the Hashem and the Kelim of Atzilus are absolutely one. As I state in Kabbalah, Shem Yuchad behem betachlis. The Eibush there is 100% miyuchad with Elam Atzilus. Shehu Amadachul, as the Rambam says. The Rambam says that about the Eibishter, that the Eibishter's das is different than ours. The Eibishter's Chachma and Yediyah is different than ours. It's in Hilchus. What's he say there? The Torah Hilchus Tshuva.
No, at the beginning, the first start.
Okay. He says over there that what? That by us, there's the Madan, there's the Yediyah, and there's the Yodua. But there's the knower, which is the person, and there's the knowledge. Then there's that which is known. Right? There's three different things. And by Hashem, it's all one. But the Eibishter is one with his Chachma, absolutely one. In other words, the Eibishter's Chachma is not moisif anything in him. But me, there's me and there's my knowledge. And I existed before my knowledge came about. So it's something which is added onto me. But since Hashem is Achdus, right? That's in... What? It's not about Shleim, it's about Achdus. Since the Eibishter is Echad HaPashat, it's one thing that people... Don't really, when you say Hashem Echad, means that the Eibishter is not a murkav. I mean, Hashem is not a composite of the human being is the ultimate composite. Physically, eyes, nose, and then there's eyes, nose, and pasha. But even if you go down to molecular level, right, we're made up of different things. And then there's also spiritually, we're a composite of so many different character traits and midas and faculties. And Hashem is Achdus. Why? Because He's one with everything.
How in Atzilus then he's saying that there's chassaron because it has to so-called lower itself to trigger malchus. If you're saying that Atzilus is, you say get l'chayt, right? So
right, but we're talking about malchus d'Atzilus as a mislabish and biyah. He's very clear. You read this on malchus d'Atzilus be'olam is biyah.
It's not the malchus if you said.
It's the madriga of malchus as it's already yielded. Right.
Not in the core.
Right. So in Atzilus is Huamada. The Eibishter over there is one with the Chachma. It's not true about Chachma de Bria or Chachma de Yitzira. Over there, Taka is a Davar Nifred. But the Rambam says Huamada. It's talking about, it's referring to Chachma de Atzilus. And the same thing is true regarding all the midas of Atzilus.
The knowledge is Chachma. There's the knower, what's known, and knowledge. Knowledge is Chachma.
Yeah.
The faculty.
Yeah. What is known is that's something which is outside of it. Right? By the Eibush, that's even bigger chiddush. That also is malach. And therefore, within Atzilus itself, the mo'ir, the source of light, is not diminished. From the fact that it illuminates and gives of its light to other madrigas. It's not leaving its own essence. It's not leaving what it is. For the art also reach biyah. It's impossible. In other words, if Chachma and Chesed would just shine from their place in Atzilus, then what would happen? That would be like a Rosh Hashiva coming in to a second grade class and giving a shir on a Maram Shif. That's what would happen if Chachma and Malchus would be mayor from their place into Malchus as it enters biyah. So, in order for it to reach biyah, it's impossible for it to be mekabeli, mi'iram, and mekoima, umahusa vatzmutzah shabatzilus, if it's illuminating from its place in Atzilus, because they're very distant from one another, bedilu ge'erach, kenal, with a complete distance. Im loya yidei, the only way it's possible for to have the oiris of Atzilus to be meir in Biyah, im loya de shatered be mekoyma eser mailos achoranis. It has to be taken down 10 levels. Hem yutzfiris Atzilus. If it's slabish bereisha bria, and it's mislabish in the head of bria, which is Malchus says it is the head of bria, so as the spashim for the gia eira, then its light can reach b'chol eisa elam.
So the answer to the question based upon the mashal of the oil was that you're correct. That in Atzilus itself, that is what it is.
Correct.
But saying as it manifests itself in
Correct.
That's what it's not.
Right.
I'm sorry, what's the answer? The question was 2 candles, one gives out more, it doesn't lose anything. What's the answer?
He didn't use the one where he uses about the oil, that you have the candle and it's meir and it's light. And the answer is but what if you're a few blocks away from the candle and you have to move the candle? In other words, in Atzilus itself, in Achanami, the fact that one Chachma is not nechsar by the fact that it's mashpia in Bina or Das or Chesed, and the same thing in all the spheres, that they're all mashpia one into another, and it doesn't make it lose. There's nothing lost in the mucker from it.
Why? Because something ruchnius.
Because it's be'erach. It's like the teacher who teaches, and he's not leaving his place really, and the student is listening and is receiving from it.
How do you refer to that malchus that's not manifested itself in the other malchus? What do you refer that to? The malchus that
In Chassidus called there's malchus as it is b'mkoima, as it is b'mkoima, and then there's malchus as it's yered into biyah. And it was very clear before talking about the malchus as yered into biyah.
He asked the question, you light one candle from the other. Nothing changes. So what's the answer then?
Interesting. I didn't even note that.
Yeah.
Because later he moves the muscle. Later he moves the muscle to the light that comes from God. Right. I didn't notice. So maybe he's saying the answer tak is this is not like lighting one candle from another candle. This is like the oil of a candle, and the oil of a candle can be mashpia bir kiruv ben aperichuk.
What's the question? What's the answer? He's asking it, no, but he's not asking, okay, why is it like a candle? He's answering, it's not like a candle.
No.
Why is it like a candle? Why is it like a candle? Because Russian is you don't lose. If I tell you 2 plus 2 is 4, nothing changed by telling you that information. So what's his answer to that? That's like moving a candle. That's not the question. The question is 2 plus 2 is 4. If you know it and 100 people know it, I didn't lose anything. The fact that 2 by 2 is 4, nothing changed. So what does it change over?
Because at the end of the day, if you're looking at it from the light, then the light is great over here, but not over here.
No, but he started with the Bashal
And
Limit. You got to answer according to the Bashal Limit.
What?
You got to, he did.
But he's not using the moving the candle as part of the answer.
No, his point's very correct. It's like you moved off the question and answered not the error of the question.
In other words, the question was lighting one candle from another, and the answer.
You're moving a candle.
The answer was not. It's not talking about lighting one candle from another.
It's talking about gaining the light
gaining
by
from the
moving
light of the candle. Right. In other words, is the issue over here that when you light another candle you don't lose anything, or is the issue that when a candle illuminates, nothing is lost from it by its illumination or from the place where it is?
But that's not how
and Itaka moves.
But
that's not how he expressed the question. The Moshe was saying is good. Yeah, the question wasn't expressed that way. That's a very good point.
I hear your question. It's a good question. I'll be interested in looking in other mamarim, that perhaps to talk about this and see if there's it can, excuse the pun, shed some light on this topic. But the Indian is understood. In other words, I hear the problem of the mashal, the nekuda what he's trying to say, which is that when you have 2 things be'erach one to another, so the Elyon and the Tachton, the Elyon can remain in its place and still be mashpia, and the Tachton can receive. Whereas when you have 2 things that are be'enarech, if the Elyon remains in its place, the Tachton won't be able to receive. The Elyon has to literally leave where it is and go to the Makam HaTachton. We're not talking physically leave, but it has to be mislabish into the. It can't, and when it's mislabish into the erech hatachten, it can't be itself. It's right now in a different mode, so it's missing from its place. The Inyan is understood. The question you're asking about it seems like a bait and switch is a good question, but the Inyan remains. Like the Rav and Talmud Mashal, it works very well to explain this concept.
That's the reason that works, because the person is limited. So if I'm trying to explain to a 5-year-old, right now to leave my place. I'm limited.
The candle, it also
That's what, the point is that his original question was not stopping why. When you light one candle to another candle, it doesn't lose anything, because a ruchnistic thing is not, physically you're right when you're teaching a 5-year-old it's gonna lose something. But spiritually it shouldn't work that way. So he's answering the
Why shouldn't it work that way spiritually?
I'm asking, if I tell you 2 plus 2 is 4.
Right.
The 2 plus 2, that's fact, lose anything? Did he lose years and 2 plus 2 is 4 that I told it to you? I'm giving you that information. Is 2 plus 2 4 going to die 7 years earlier now? That's his question, no?
that
Why
chachma
don't
is
you
the
lose
erech
anything?
anyway.
He gave Dr. Melech the goods. He told him 2 plus 2 is 4, whatever it is. Why did he lose years? It's candle to candle. That's what I understand.
That chachma 2 plus 2 is 4 is the erech anyway. But to explain the whole concept of a crazy math problem is not erech anyway.
But
I
it
understand.
doesn't lose anything.
Okay.
It is. You're not giving over.
Because when you're giving over 2 plus 2 is 4, you're giving over to someone who's be'erach you. This is not about the union of 2 plus, let's put it in different ways. 2 plus 2 is 4 is not yours in the first place. Okay. We're talking about something that is yours. Where you are. For you to give over that part of you to something that's lower requires of you to leave your place, which means you're not being in your place at that moment.
You're saying is when I'm telling you 2 plus 2 is 4, I'm not giving you it. I'm teaching your brain to understand something which
is external to both of us.
The same thing. The Rabbi is teaching in Talmud, use your brain now. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to tell you how to understand this concept. But Adam gave him chacham, as nothing taught him chacham. He gave him a piece of chacham.
So normally the way a candle works is that in a candle it is mine, right? I'm giving off my light, and still I don't have to leave my place to give it. In Ruchni, I can give you something. In Ruchni, I can give you something, and it's taka, it's part of me, but it's not nechsa for me. I can still be in my place, like a candle.
You could.
Unless it's be'in arech. But let's just finish, it's late. Let's just finish this insight. I want to finish the topic, so next week we can move on to the next thing. And therefore, the years that Adam and the Avos gave to David, literally were missing from their lives. There was Hamshacha of these high Eirish B'derech, Yerida Gedoyla, with incredible Yerida B'dilu Ge'erach, a leap, Matzilus L'biyah, Shem Yerdim B'biyah, and when they come on to Biyah, B'hechrich Shemestalke Matzilus, they had to leave Atzilus, and they're missing there at that moment. That's why it's called a matana. Kameshakasa, the pasuk says in Tehillim, Chai, and this taka applied to David HaMelech, this pasuk, Chayim shoal mimcha nasatalei. That David asked for life, it was given. Like someone who gives a matan to his chaver, that when he gives it, it's missing. Now you realize that this entire thing that we learned today was a derech agav. And next week we're going to go back. Okay, now we're going to move on to Yitzchak. But this, all we learned today is derech agav. Since we're talking about it, we're explaining the mechanism, and we'll be continuing in your session.